Visioneering the year for life and business with NLP and hypnosis. I'm Holly Stokes with the Brain Trainer, and I love this class because we really take a dive into understanding the typical way that we do goal setting and how some of these ways that we're so accustomed to set goals can trip us up and kind of even sabotage our efforts along the way. So this is just the quick overview of the class, Visioneering overview. So we're looking at the top 3 problems with the current goal setting model that we have. And the second part, we're going to dive into enlightening your goals. So as you've looked at the coming year, I know a lot of people have felt like they've been dragging their feet or they can't seem to get their mind on board. Their motivation is kind of lagging. So we're going to look at kind of this deeper level of what's behind your goals and what can help you energize that motivation, purpose, focus to get more targeted and focused. And also to understand some of these deeper motivations that we have. And then finally, we're going to engage the 6 key principles of the law of attraction. So there can be some different methodologies out there, but these are the ones that I've found the most useful in my own process of coming to, creating my life and getting my brain on board as well. So, and then there's my tagline here is life, health, relationships, career. It all gets easier with your brain on board. And that's certainly true because before we can create things in the outside world, our mind has to have a map for that. But we're going to be talking about that as well as we go through. Okay, so here is the very common model for goal setting is that we have point A is where we are, point B is where we want to get to. And once we define that, okay, I'm here, I want to get there. And then we start working that wheel. Maybe we're good for a few days. Maybe we get fired up about it. We get, okay, I'm going to do it this time. And we get excited. And then as we're starting to turn that wheel and put in that effort, we can start to lose motivation or life happens and things come up and we say, oh, well, I'll put it off till the weekend or I can make it up tomorrow. We find ourselves starting to procrastinate. And then what happens? We kind of fall off that wheel. We kind of eventually, after 1 week, 2 weeks, we kind of fall off the wagon. And this is not the end of the goal setting cycle. No, the next piece of how we typically work with goals is that we end up giving up on this goal, this thing that we really wanted, and we tuck it into, I call it the goals in the graveyard. All of the goals of the past are kind of buried in that place where we're like, okay, this just isn't working for me right now. I just can't do it. But before we tuck it into the graveyard, we then eulogize the goal. Oh, I don't know what's wrong with me. I'm just undisciplined, unmotivated. Why can't I just make myself do it, right? So you might have even heard some of those things that you've said to yourself. But this is still not the end. No. The next time we go to set a goal, we then get visitations from the ghosts of goals past. You're just lazy, undisciplined, unmotivated. What makes you think you'll do it this time? I've heard this one before. So then our mind starts to naysay ourselves, and we might even get the motivation sucked right out of our sails even before we get started. And so here's one of the main things that we're kind of battling when we're putting in that determination, I'm going to do it this time. So here's some of the main problems with goals is that often when we set them, they're not clear. And we're going to dial into that a little bit more to make them really defined. And I like to call it brain friendly. Now, the other challenge is that there's rigid ideas that we have about goals. And if you think about how our mind works, when we think about setting a goal, our mind is actually, especially the unconscious level of the mind, is very expansive and it's looking through multiple definitions of the word goal. And if you think about the different ways that we use it, we often have those big playing fields, soccer, for instance, and there's the one little place at the end of the field, and then the teams are trying to get that ball into that little window. So here's a quick client story that goes along with this. Is I had one client come in, and she was wanting to exercise an hour a day every day. Now, usually I encourage clients that haven't exercised in a while to kind of dial that back, because it can be a significant time commitment. We don't want to burn ourselves out, right? So, but she was dead set on this. She was really excited to do it. And so we met the next week, and she comes in and she's like, I have failed. So she had wanted to dial this exercise, this hour every day, 5 days during the week. And so I said, well, tell me a little more about how you failed. And she's like, well, I only made it to the gym 3 times instead of 5. She, in her mind, is seeing it as a total failure. In my mind, I'm seeing this as, wow, this is amazing progress. So there's one way that we tend to, especially with goals that we worked on in the past, when we feel like we've been really frustrated them or even have given up with them before, is to recognize progress instead of these rigid ideas, success and failure. I often talk about, the image of giving a child a bicycle. If you give a child a bicycle, how many chances do they get to learn to ride the bicycle? Well, they get as many as it takes. And if they fall off the bicycle, would you say that they had failed? No, because they're still in the process of learning and growing and figuring it out. And so even when they fall off the bicycle, their brain is making calculations and adjustments about motor movement, muscle control, coordination, and balance. So the next time they get on the bicycle, they're even more prepared to be more successful. So when we look at this challenge with goal setting, we want to look through that lens of what is the progress that you're making? What are you doing that's actually working? And then the third one is that downward spiral. And that's what we touched on earlier with the goals in the graveyard. So when we kind of look at that history of this idea of this rigid idea of failure, and then this history of these things that we believe we failed on, when we might have been making progress, or I like to say, we might have been learning at a deeper level of what works and what doesn't work for us, right? So I want you to go ahead and take a sheet of paper, and you can just use a blank sheet. And I want you to kind of write out some of the goals that you may have had in the past that you may have been frustrated with, or that you may have given up on in the past. And I want you to recognize, as you're kind of just writing down 1 or 2 there, I want you to recognize what progress have you made. You may not have completed that goal, but what progress have you been making along the way? Even if you're recognizing what doesn't work for you rather than what's been working for you. So we might even look at that goal, and underneath it, you can write what doesn't work, and then to the side, what does work. So we want to get the mind looking for progress, looking for what works. You might go to that blank sheet of paper and think about some of these goals that you may have wanted in the past that have felt like you've fallen off the wagon with. And then I want you to kind of put some ideas about what didn't work with those. And then to the other side, what you found has worked, right? So we want to get the mind to start recognizing more progress rather than these rigid ideas, success and failure. Now I'll let you take a quick minute there. In the handout, there is this, we're going to talk about this in a moment. It's this life balance wheel, and you can see just different areas of life. I think there's 8 on this wheel, and it's in the handout. You can get it on the page. If you go to the website, thebraintrainerllc.com/classes, click on the Visioneering link, and it's on that page that's linked through the classes page. So you can get it there. So I want you to kind of dial in some of the ideas about this coming year. What are some of the things that you want to be creating in your life? Now, this next section, when we go into, I like to call it enlighten your goals. We want to get the mind away from some of this rigid thinking that we have with goals. And that's one of the beautiful pieces about law of attraction, that we can tap into more of a fluid, creative, imaginative way of playing with these goals to address some of the different layers of the mind. What I want to do is just go around quickly and say one goal you've struggled with in the past, and then one goal you want to reinvigorate or reignite for this coming year. And it can be anywhere around that wheel, right? But just to think of one area that you want to do. So let me read these to you because you may not have them in front of you. So the different areas, there's fun and recreation. That's my place that I really like to start with first. What are my fun goals, right? That gets us out of that problem piece. And then finances, career is the next one, love and romance, health, friends and family, work and home environment, and then personal and spiritual growth. Okay, so I'll go ahead and open the lines here. What's one goal that you've been frustrated with in the past and one goal that you want to reignite? They don't have to be the same, but they can be, especially for this exercise.